All right, welcome in everyone. It's a small crew tonight, so it's gonna be fun. First up, we have a new organizer, and if you're new here, we'll also introduce all of the organizers. So I'm CJ, co-organizer here. We've also got Marlena, who you saw, and then this is Daniel, who's brand new, and he's gonna be helping us out. And then also Cass and Cheddar, who are not here tonight, but if you come to meetups in the future, you might see them. First up, we have a code of conduct. I'm going to read you the abridged version, but the full version is at denverscript.com/code-of-conduct. DenverScript is dedicated to providing a harassment-free community for everyone. Participants violating these rules may be sanctioned or expelled from the community at the discretion of the DenverScript organizers. If you're being harassed, notice that someone else is being harassed, or have any other concerns, please contact a DenverScript organizer immediately. So that's myself, Marlena, Daniel. If you don't feel comfortable coming up to us, you can email us, denverscript@gmail.com. Some ground rules. These pretty much apply for tonight because ideally we will hear from everyone when we get into the community roundtable, but just be kind, don't talk over each other, and basically the whole session after the news will be Q&A. So try to ask constructive questions. Personally, I don't mind if you try a gotcha. It could be fun, but also we won't go down that path for too long if it gets too weird. But yeah, it's after the news, we're going down the rabbit hole. And like I said, we're always looking for sponsors. So if you work at a company and maybe you'd like to get your company's logo in front of the crew here, reach out to us and you can maybe sponsor the food, which would be great. And we're always looking for speakers. So I think we have at least one talk lined up for next month, but after that we have no more speakers. So if you would like to talk, please submit. And we allow talks of all types, from beginner to advanced. It can be just slightly adjacent to JavaScript. It doesn't have to be directly about JavaScript. If you have something you're passionate about, we'd love to hear from you. So please submit your talk to denverscript.com. Now, the news with Marlena.
Hi everyone! As mentioned, I'm Marlena. I'm the chatty one. And I have a lot of news here. And so we've got a more free flow night. We're not going to rush through it like I might otherwise. Apologies. The biggest one, well, I don't know about the biggest one. One of the big ones is some security problems on NPM. We were talking a bit about this before the meetup started up, but basically there was a phishing campaign against major contributors to major packages on NPM that succeeded. And they have been mostly like doing weird crypto shit. So thank goodness for them just doing weird crypto shit. But there's lots to look at in terms of what's happened. If you're fascinated with this kind of thing, like I am, it's like a train wreck, but it's an interesting train wreck. And people have been doing lots of thinking about it. So I included a few articles that were kind of talking about the implications of the attack and what we should be doing going forward. Nothing like crazy reads, but I think very interesting. JavaScript's trademark problem is ongoing. If you've been here before, you may know that I have just a fascination with this. Like the fact that we're fighting over the JavaScript trademark now. Basically, Oracle's being a big, dumb corporation about it. And they're not going to win any friends this way, in my opinion. We've got some news about TypeScript. We've got some news about Remix, which is going to fork Preact instead of being working off of React. I have a lot of feelings about forks. Anybody here heard of Hacklang? Hacklang was a fork of PHP and it is dead now. Slack was built with it and may still be, for all I know. Some Angular's got some summer updates. We've got VLAN stuff. We've got a new WebAssembly specification. This is if you really want to dig in. But it will mean some changes, and I'm looking forward to reading some more digestible information about that. I threw in this "you no longer need JavaScript" because CJ has done some very interesting talks about where you can use CSS and HTML natively instead of relying on JavaScript. So I thought that was a good little callback for the meetup. Chrome is 17 years old. I know. Lots of interesting stuff in here. We're looking at Storybook 10. And I found this one really fascinating because it's like if React is just your default, then there's not room for other frameworks to innovate because they never gain traction, because everyone's like, well, we all know React, or we can hire for React. And I agree with the article, but I also think that the churn can be really difficult for your average developer. Like, oh, I guess I'll go learn the new framework. Sometimes you're just tired. On that note, Ripple's a new front-end framework. So just it's when you have the opportunity to check out the new stuff, and when you're starting, like, especially a project you really want to last, it's worthwhile to think about the tools that you're using, but also, like, don't put so much pressure on yourself to know everything that's happening in the space. That's all. Conferences. So very soon, and you want to jet off to New York, we've got International JavaScript Conference New York. There's Smashing Conf. We'd love to hear about it when you get back. You could submit a talk. I added a few, wait, there was another one. Oh yeah, the JetBrains JavaScript Day is online and free. And DevSecCon, I believe, is also free and is fully online. Some of them have remote options. But that's kind of what we're looking at for meetups. We're kind of winding down, or not meetups, conferences. We're winding down for the year. And then I never ever want to talk through the releases. I threw Firefox on there, even though they release like Chrome, like constantly, because somebody told me recently that Firefox isn't being updated anymore. And it's like, you're very wrong. I love Firefox. Anyways, anyone else have some JavaScript news that they'd like to share with the group? All right, I'm going to hand it back to CJ.
All right. Now we talk about anything and everything. So this is going to be a community roundtable. My name is CJ, like I mentioned earlier, and we're just going to talk about stuff. We're going to start on one particular topic, and then where we go from there, we don't know. But I'd love to hear from everyone at some point, whether you're asking a question or providing some insight, like if you have something interesting to say about whatever we're talking about, whatever we're seeing. Love to hear from you. And we do have that.
The spatula of speaking.
Yeah, so if you do need to ask a question or want to speak up at some point, just raise your hand. You'll get the spatula of speaking. First thing, when we got here, we were actually talking about the hack that happened for NPM. And I don't know if Marlena mentioned it, but all of the news she just talked about are at DenverScript.com. So DenverScript.com/news. You can look at the September news. All those links you can go and click and read later on today. But all this stuff, one of the particular campaigns was a phishing campaign. And I thought it would be really funny to just recreate the NPM login page, because that's what happened for this particular attack. Someone bought the domain npmjs.fun and made it look exactly like npmjs.com. And then they started emailing people like, hey, you need to reset your password. And then it led them to a malicious website. So we're going to talk a little bit about AI tonight. And one of the really popular vibe coding tools is called Lovable. Has anybody used Lovable? Just one person? This was my first time using it today to recreate NPM. My prompt was clone this landing page, npmjs.com, and this is what I got. It just spit it right back out. And you can look at the code. It's I think it's a Next.js website, or is it? No, it's a Vite and React website. So it created lots of little components, and now we have the npm.js webpage. So and then after that, the buttons didn't work. So I was like, hey, make that sign-in button work. So let's make the sign-in button. Go to the sign-in page, clone this page. And so now when you click sign in, we've got ourselves an npm login page. Great. I don't know what I want to say about this. Like at this point, if you know anything about tech, this is just the front end, right? We're not actually recreating any sort of login or anything like that. At this point, we could create some sort of backend that accepts this username and password, stores it in a database somewhere, and then redirects to the real npm website. That is a classic phishing attack. But literally anybody that knows how to type on a keyboard could have done this. And this is the world that we live in now. And this is with the free account too. So I'm not paying anything. So there's lovable.dev is one of these vibe coding tools, but there are quite a few others. So I just thought that was interesting. I thought I'd start there. Let's get to know you all. So yes, question.
I was going to say something.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm going to like butcher the details of this, but I did learn something interesting about the attack, which was they basically were trying to get people when they make a Bitcoin deposit into a Bitcoin wallet to just hijack that and go to one of their accounts. But it was a pretty interesting thing. Again, I don't know, I probably can't do it full justice, but it was, they had an algorithm that was checking the actual wallet you wanted to deposit something into. And if one of their wallets was a close enough string to the string of the wallet that you were trying to deposit in, it would swap it out only in those cases. So it was actually like a somewhat like a pointed attack only, and trying to make it so that when you get your confirmation pop up, it's a string that looks like the string you would be expecting, and I thought that was an interesting thing to share.
It was definitely clever. I mean, so this socket.dev article is linked in the security news, and they go into how it all went down. There's also some nice quick YouTube videos you can watch. I think, did the Primogen do one? Did you see his? Yeah, so the Primogen did one. There's also Low Level Security, which is a really great YouTube channel. It talks about all the recent hacks. Maybe it's not that. Oh, he changed his name to just Low Level. There he is. But he's not just web-based. He goes into a lot of various hacks that happen and kind of breaks them down, how they work. So you can check this one out to see the breakdown of that. But this article also talks about it. But this is the code that basically got injected into these NPM packages after the author got hijacked. And you can see all of these are crypto wallet addresses. So there's a ton of crypto wallet addresses. And like what Nico was mentioning, basically, if this code made it into a site maliciously, when a crypto transaction is happening, it would find the crypto address that was the closest to the one that was actually meant to go to. So yeah, you can see this breakdown here. There was another breakdown. Was it socket? But they did an analysis to determine, okay, the biggest packages on NPM were hacked. How much damage did they do? How much crypto did they slurp up? And it was like $20. It's like not much at all. And so all I can think is like, this is a wasted opportunity. Like if you look at, let's look at NPM download stats. Really all I want to show you is, so debug is one of the packages that was compromised. It was by this guy, Quix is his name. He's one of the contributors. But you may have never actually installed debug yourself, but something that you depend on might have actually had debug installed. And you can see that in the last month, it has had 1.6 billion downloads. Another one was a package called
Colorize.
Colorize. That was one of them. What's the one for colors on the terminal?
Chalk.
Chalk, yeah. So he also is a maintainer of Chalk, 1.3 billion downloads. But all I wanted to say is, with that much reach, all they tried to do was steal crypto. They could have done something much, much worse, because a lot of people have CI scripts running that will automatically update their dependencies. And this is the code they injected, but they could have injected anything. They could have injected code that slurped up all the environment variables, like API keys, and sent them off to some server somewhere. Or they could have injected like persistence code, so that way, even if you upgrade to the latest version of the package, there was potentially some malicious code that was left on the machine that you couldn't remove unless you actually like ran a full wipe of your machine. And then that could have, because it had persistence, could have potentially from there tried to hack other machines on whatever network it was on. They could have done a lot worse. And all they tried to do was steal some crypto.
This isn't the point, but on the screen, the part you run up there, you have to say, as far as like self-documenting code, no, scroll down a little. Identified victim address is very self-documented.
So I will say this is unobfuscated, unminified code. So the security researchers went in and renamed the variables so that we could understand the code.
Come on, it was a good joke.
Yeah, it was a great joke. It really was. but yeah.
Yeah, so this was Monday before last, or last Monday?
Mm-hmm.
I forget. It was kind of a disaster on several levels because that day, so like GitHub put out the advisory for all the packages that were affected, but the version that they marked was greater than version 0. So it really only affected like, it was a new package being published, right? You can't unpublish or modify packages that you've already published in the NPM registry. So I logged in and, we were starting a new project or something and we were pulling down something and all of a sudden it's like NPM audit says that there's 24 criticals in the project. And socket.dev is great. I typically search for packages here even before I look at NPM because it has that AI scanning thing that goes on. And, ostensibly NPM is run by Microsoft and they don't really have like a similar comparable function, even though I can get this for free from this small company. So that was a little frustrating. And the other thing, because this happened and I think there was another hack the week later, one of the things I'm going to start doing is using the before parameter when doing an npm install. So it's kind of annoying because you have to put in the -3 days or whatever. But it's a quick way to like get the resolution of your npm packages from like on or before that whatever day that you put in there. And so theoretically you're safe from any newly malicious published packages. So that was like a GitHub like issues rabbit hole that I jumped down for 20 minutes or longer than that actually.
So would you put this in your npm RC?
No. So when you I think you can put it in npm RC,
okay.
But you can. Yeah, I haven't actually used it yet because we haven't needed to pull anything new down.
Okay.
But I think you specify that parameter along with the install, and then you get old stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I saw there was another article. Quick plug for the place I work, Syntax. We have a bi-weekly newsletter, and last week we gave some rundown on what happened, but there's a few scripts you can run. So people have posted these like gists of scripts that you can run to see is your project vulnerable. So these are the specific packages that got compromised and their versions. And this script will go through to see does your project have one of those installed. But this doesn't have what I was looking for. Oh, but this is the article that says they only stole. I say 5 cents. I think at this point, all of those those addresses have gotten up to like $20. But another thing you can do, we'll have to find the script. I'll add it to the notes, which I haven't added here yet. This will be on our GitHub. But you can also make it so that your CI server doesn't instantly update packages. So like you can set it so it has to wait like 1 day or wait for a package to have been published and out there for a day before upgrading it to it. Because that also would have potentially prevented people from installing these packages because the hack itself was caught within an hour. So within an hour, NPM jumped in, they took those versions down. But if you happen to install within that hour, you would have gotten one of these vulnerable versions. So there's a way in your package.json to say, wait until a package version has at least been published for like a day or however long before you download it. And so that could be one way to prevent the attack as well. Yes, but you also highlighted the fact that NPM should probably do more about this. Especially for these packages that are downloaded so much. I wanted to find, I don't know, just like most downloaded, like a list of most downloaded packages, because essentially anything in the top 100 should likely have a lot more security around it from NPM themselves. Like NPM, yeah, I think this is the site. So this shows 100 fastest growing NPM packages. You can look at most downloaded. If we just do in the last month, we can see debug is the second most downloaded package on NPM in the last month. Chalk, the third most downloaded. So like my thought is anything in this list, like the top 100, there should be a ton of checks and balances to even publish a new version. And that's something like that maybe NPM should implement because it has such a wide reach. There are 1.4 million dependent packages on NPM for debug and 1.3 million dependent packages for chalk. So yeah, this is the world that we live in. Any other thoughts? Anybody else run an NPM installer? Yeah, other thoughts is fine.
Yeah, so I had an adjacent thought about AI and coding and packages.json.
Yeah.
So it did that landing page really well, but I find it fascinating that like chatgpt, they can do that sort of thing so well, but then they'll also get some details wrong. Like, you know, I came across a job application that said, to keep the reviews of applications down, take a look at our GitHub repo and tell us what version of charting library we're using. So I went to the package.json. I thought it was probably D3, so I could control them. Oh, D3. Oh, 7.9.0. So I put that in, fine. Then I thought, let me ask ChatGPT that same question. And I gave it the GitHub repo. I didn't go to the package.json, but I said, here's the GitHub repo. What version of D3 is it on? And it told me something wrong. And then I went back and I said, no, here's the line on package.json. Oh, okay, it is 7.9.
Yeah.
And then so why did you think it was the other thing? Oh, I was looking at old forum posts. It's like, but I told you where to look. But I guess what I'm getting at is it can do something like that so well, but when I ask a specific question like that, it gets it so wrong. If you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are that AI and LLMs are an imperfect technology. Like it's non-deterministic generation. And so you're going to get things like that. And like there were some recent papers that came out that talked about how the reason LLMs hallucinate is because in their training and like their reward functions, they're rewarded for like almost answering a question. They're not, there's no penalty for saying, or there's also no reward for saying, I don't know, right? So like in a lot of the trainings of the LLM, they have humans that come in to evaluate the output, and then that gets fed back in. But what this paper was saying is in the training, they should likely also take into account when an AI responds, I don't know, and say, that's good, because that'll prevent it from hallucinating. So if it somehow can't figure something out or isn't confident enough, maybe it only has like 60% confidence, it would say, I don't know, instead of hallucinating and saying, oh, version 5 or whatever. So in general, all the popular LLMs that are out there have been trained in a way to reward giving an answer, even if that answer is wrong. So like that's where those hallucinations are coming from. My answer to that, though, is to potentially use a tool that is like embedded in your code base. So like something like Cursor, which I use at work. So this is Cursor. It looks like VS Code, but it has direct access to all of your files. So if you were to ask it what version of D3 is installed, it will literally look at the package.json, and that will be in its context, and it's much less likely to hallucinate. Whereas with ChatGPT, if you give it a link, there's a million things it could do, right? It could go off and get that page, but maybe it didn't see that there was a listing of files, and it didn't see that, oh, I need to request another file. So using an agent that is in your code base, I think gives you more grounded answers. But anytime you're dependent or you're asking the AI to like do all the work, there's potential for hallucinations in there. Yeah.
Start here.
I had saw something interesting where it was like an AI researcher and he was talking about how people are trying to reduce the number of hallucinations, but to his perspective, like whenever you say like, come up with 10 rhymes or anything you ask AI to do, the magic of its answers is in its hallucinations of it like coming up with new stuff. And so his point was kind of to be using, if you're going to do a calculator task, you could ask AI what's 6 plus 7 or whatever, but it being non-deterministic to not use it for deterministic type of things. And then he talked about in code editors or cursor type of things, how that bypasses the hallucinations is by direct context. So it's only the fact that package.json is in your repo that it knows to look there. And so like for your case, if you would have copy pasted the file, I know you didn't need it to actually tell you the version, but like his point is when you need AI to do something more deterministic, to give more context for those cases and stuff. And that was his workaround, because like his whole point was the hallucinations are the magic, which I thought was an interesting take rather than trying to reduce the hallucinations.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to like when and where are you using these LLMs? Because in a creative context, sure, like hallucinate all you want, because again, that's like you said, or he said, that that's how we see it as being creative. But in a code base, like we need it to be correct. We need it to not make things up. I found the paper, I'll link it. It was actually published by OpenAI called Why Language Models Hallucinate. And they talk about it, and they talk about future plans for potentially trying to prevent hallucinations in future versions of ChatGPT. Cool. So yeah.
And off of that, like, for any of you guys that have tried using different AI tools for coding, I found so much more success with Cursor. Someone turned me on to Rue, which is a fork of Klein. I didn't know about Klein either, but that and Lovable, like all of those have like their secret sauce of their own prompts in the back and the context. So I'm imagining for your Lovable prompt, it probably scraped the page and like got all the copy, whereas when you're in chat, the prompt for it is to have a conversation with you, and it's not tooled or optimized to, hey, use this tool to go scrape this. Hey, look, do a regex in this file for what you're looking for. So yeah, I would say if any of you guys are trying to, if your AI coding has been copying and pasting into chat windows, like trying some of these other tools that let you add that context, because I've had like 2 different times where I'm like, holy crap, like I did not think this was going to work, because all of it, me doing it prior in a different way didn't. And it's like, oh, when I use this tool with this context and some company's engineer has figured out the secret sauce, like it's pretty amazing.
I'll show you an example here with Cursor in the syntax code base. So syntax.fm just lists our podcast, so you can see all the latest episodes. And then for any given episode, it's got like show notes and transcripts. And there's a bunch of stuff happening on the back end because our editors and producers will create the notes in a markdown file that gets pushed to GitHub. And then once it gets PR'd in, that creates the notes and generates. So it's a pretty complex code base, is all I'm saying. But if we open up this code base, oh, not that. Whoa. Cursor agent? I want to open up Cursor itself in this code base. Let's just start a new chat window, and I'll just say, tell me about this code base. But what I want to show you is all of the tool calls that it does. Because inside of Cursor, it has access to things like grep, so it can search across your files and then find the files that match what you're asking and then include that in the context. It can also do things like find across the files. So yeah, you can see to answer this question, it's figured out, okay, I need to read the package.json. I need to read this config file. I need to read our Prisma schema. I want to see what routes exist in this Svelte application. So it listed the routes. So this is like agentic coding versus just copy pasting. Like this has full access to this code base and all of these files. So it has the ability to pick the right ones to include in the context as well. And that's kind of like Cursor's secret sauce, or any other AI coding agent's secret sauce, is figuring out which tool calls to make and then figuring out what context to include in the overall prompt. And it's kind of like this loop. It's like a back and forth of, okay, what did the user ask me? What should I do and what do I know? And Cursor very likely probably sent a list of all of these folders and files to the AI. So like if we do a tree, I don't have a tree. Does anybody know how to do tree on a Mac? I'm just gonna install tree. Yeah, we'll wait for that. but basically, like think about if you wanted to answer this question, tell me about this code base. What would you do? Like you'd go through and look at all the files. You'd be like, okay, package.json tells me what's installed. The routes folder tells me what routes exist. Probably utilities folder tells me various functions that need to be performed. So like that's how I would do it. And so you can expect like the AI has a similar output. So when this prompt is sent, it potentially says, okay, well, what are all of the files that exist? And it's likely behind the scenes, it sent it the entire list of every file and folder. And then after that, it was like, okay, I see there's a package.json in there. I want to read it. So that's a tool call to read it. I see there's a Svelte file. I want to read it. And so the LLM output was likely a list of tool calls that said, these are all the files that I want to see the contents of. And then it's getting the contents. And you could think of basically from here up, if you did this manually, you'd be typing all of that into ChatGPT. Because it's very likely if you copy pasted the package.json into the ChatGPT window, it would have gotten it right. Because it's right there. And that's basically what this is doing. It's like, okay, get the contents of the package.json, get the contents of this. Now everything from here up is included in my prompt, and now I can answer this question. So I scanned all these files. At a high level, it's using SvelteKit 2 and Svelte 5 runes. It's deployed to Vercel. We're using PostCSS. We're storing our data in Prisma. So by doing all of those tool calls, it's got enough information to answer my question of, tell me about this code base. So that's a very like mundane question, but when you start to try to implement features or figure other things out in this code base, it's doing a very similar thing, and that's why it's potentially giving you better output than just like asking ChatGPT and it maybe not having the same context. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, can you switch from agent mode to ask mode?
Yeah.
And ask the exact same question and see?
Yeah.
I think we'll get very different answers.
Let's see. So at this point, I've never switched out of agent mode, but
Yeah.
you can say ask, and then it kind of behaves a little bit like a chat window. So tell me about this code base.
Yeah, and I was just going to say the one thing that I haven't done a whole lot with trying to integrate LLMs, but definitely is tool calls.
Yeah.
So whenever you need anything deterministic, do not rely on, teach the LLM how to do the tool call, and then use that in your actual work.
And we can talk about tools too, but let's take a step back. Who here has used Cursor or like an agentic IDE? Okay, so like, you can be honest, okay. 80-ish% of the room. That's okay, because probably 6 months ago, it would have been like probably 50% of the room or less. Like everyone is gradually realizing, okay, I have to use Cursor now. Because I went through that same process, but a year ago, because my job pays me to stay up to date on all this stuff. But for the longest time, I wasn't using AI tools. I'm like, okay, I'll start using AI tools. But yeah, Before that, I was just every now and then plugging things into ChatGPT, and every now and then, decent answers. But once you see just how powerful these agentic tools can be, it's kind of hard to go back. So it did technically do. Let's see. Yeah. So what is the overall architecture and purpose of this app? Where are framework configurations? So it was actually able to read the files. I think the thing about the ask mode is I don't think it can directly edit files. Like, it can suggest edits, but with this agent mode, if I ask it to do something, it'll figure out what files it needs to edit and then suggest, hey, these are the edits I want to apply to these files. And you could potentially set on auto apply mode. So yeah, it did make some tool calls. But really, when you get into like modifying code is when you'll kind of see like a different output from chat mode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just real quick. I think Copilot, the ask mode, and the agentic mode are actually quite different.
Okay.
Because I did almost the exact same exercise just a couple of days ago
Yeah.
in Copilot, and they were two completely different sets of calls.
And so this is the other thing, tools,
Yeah.
like so Cursor has been the best for the longest. They're slowly there are other tools out there that are better. And my work pays for Cursor, so I get to use it. But VS Code with Copilot, so it looks exactly the same, but this is VS Code, it's not Cursor. And then this is their chat window, which is using Copilot. I am curious though, tell me about this code base. But I would also say this is a great exercise for you all to try. Go download all these tools, right? Go try doing this inside of VS Code with Copilot. Try to, like, Cursor has a free tier, Copilot has a free tier. You can start to see what these things can do. And it's also interesting that, like, a lot of the times they're talking to the same models. Like, I think here we have GPT-5 Mini. Over in Cursor, I had GPT-5 selected. But let's go in ask mode and say, tell me about this code base.
And while that's thinking, we've got
Yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say, I really like using ask mode after I've had it do something for me. I recently had to do a site in Astro, which I wasn't super familiar with, and I was like, hey, set all this up for me. And then I switched to ask mode and said, like, teach me how to do this next time, like give me an overview of it, because it does give you a summary, but that I think would be a use case of like, hey, I don't need you to edit this code, but I do want you to respond.
Yeah. Does anybody know, how do I get back to the other prompt that I made? Is it this button?
It's the history.
Oh, this buddy. Okay.
I was going to say, I actually do the opposite, where I use, I go in with ask and say, hey, what are all ways that we could do this? And then after reading all options, then go into agent mode while in that same context window, so that the rough layout of the approach was already talked about in ask mode, and then have agent mode like execute number 3 suggestion or whatever. And then just one other small thing that I've noticed recently that I've been doing for like this context within Claude or something to look stuff up is if there's a GitHub repo that's like online, I'll just clone the repo and then ask within Cursor or something like that how to use that repo, rather than just ask like ChatGPT how to use this library, because I ran into an issue with stats.js and couldn't get an answer from any of the LLMs via websites or looking up documentation. But when I just cloned the repo and then started asking kind of direct code questions, I was able to do something that I don't think I would have been able to figure out without having been looking at that code. So it's super helpful to just clone other people's projects and then ask.
So I'll show an example of that. So I recently built a Sega Genesis game, and as you probably can tell, there are not a lot of documentation out there for it. And I was using an SDK, but I did exactly that. So this folder right here is the entire SDK for Sega development. And so when I was prompting it, instead of having to like find the docs or whatever, because I'm in Cursor, it can literally read this directory. It can literally go into the include folder and like read the header files and give me more context and not have to make a web request to figure this stuff out because it has access to all of those files right on the file system.
Can you run this Agentic?
Yeah, let's do it. It's not great because it took me like 3 days just to figure out how to get it all going. And we got to use Wine to run this emulator. So Wine lets you run Windows programs on a Mac. There are Mac emulators, but this emulator specifically allowed me to get like debug messages. Yeah. Where's my sound? Oh, I don't have a controller. I forget what the controls are. Actually, okay, it's super simple. You're just that little guy and you're trying to collect the circles. My idea was, so I work at a company called Sentry, and we're an error reporting platform. And our mascot is this little, and we have an AI agent called Seer. So my idea for the game was your Seer, you have to collect traces. So those little balls were your traces. And then in the next level, you'd battle a boss and like throw the traces at him. But I didn't get past the first level because it took me so long to figure everything out. But yeah, putting source code in the folder itself is a great way to give it context.
Real quick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, sorry. We've had kind of a similar group of people doing a lot of talking about AI. I would like to suggest that if there are other topics of interest, we could move on. If we want to keep talking about AI, that's also fine. But for the other folks in the room, is there any other topics that you would suggest that we could discuss tonight?
And it's also okay if we take a step back. If we've talked about anything that didn't make sense and we want to dial into that, that's okay too.
Yeah, I just wanted to leave some.
No, that's totally valid.
Error
What was that?
handling. Where's error handling going?
Error handling.
They see basically have the old JavaScript.
Hang on.
Hey, I'm gonna give you the mic so I can hear you better.
One thing that's always concerned me about using JavaScript and TypeScript is the error handling and the lack of type safety for error as an exception.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts on basically the future based where error handling is going? Are we going the effect route, using basically a result class or something built into the code base, or perhaps basically having better type safety for error?
Okay. I'll say I haven't thought a lot about this. I will show first. So you mentioned effect. This is, would you call it like almost like a functional library for JavaScript?
Yep.
In terms of how you write stuff, but basically once you start using it, the way you handle errors is kind of just like built in. So basically every program you write kind of looks like this. So you store it in a program variable, and then you use effect to run that program. Let's see if we can find the error handling.
Yeah, there you go.
So
Yeah, you got basically the results, you get the value of the error, and then basically the side effects.
where is it? I mean, this is using a generator. Does all the code use generators?
You
Or
use pipelines as well.
okay, let me find a more digestible example because generators are a lot for people that haven't seen them before. Let's see.
This is a weird piece of code.
Yeah. Yeah, this is interesting. So we have a divide function, and then you would never want to divide by 0. So if b is 0, then we do effect.die. And I guess this throws the error, and we pass an actual JavaScript error object. Otherwise, we perform the calculation. Would you say this is like typical error handling you would see in effect, or?
The problem I see with basically the effect is effect adds a lot of boilerplate for the most part, and it wraps a lot of stuff. So good to see something basically, I mean, we have the result class or result error types now, or the result return value essentially in Go, Rust, and all those languages. Could you see it going that same way in JavaScript?
I think we're too far down one path. I think because even getting people to try and use effect is an uphill battle. Because like and also like trying to do like pure functional programming in JavaScript, I think is an uphill battle as well, because there's so many differing opinions. Yeah, personally, I think it's a losing battle because the language has been around for so long, and I think if we want anything like that, we potentially should just use a different language, or maybe use a different superset of JavaScript. Maybe like a TypeScript with better error handling, that like if that exists, that kind of thing.
It's the same problem in .NET, because I'm a .NET programmer as well as a TypeScript programmer. So the .NET side is moving towards a more functional approach. And now they're trying to say, well, we need to add result to the class. And I'm trying to say the same thing out of TypeScript. It's like, okay, do we really need that?
So result class, would that be like in Rust? Or what programming languages use
Rust.
result? Yeah.
Go has something similar, which is basically it's an either monad with two paths.
So, and the idea is like you would write functions that always return a result. And a result can either be a success type or an error type. Like you could write JavaScript this way. You probably don't even need a framework to do this. Like you could just return an object with result or error on it. But this is built into the Rust language, and a lot of times you'll see methods define that as the return type. So this is what happens if there's a success, and then this is what happens if there's an error. I think it's an interesting pattern. Does effect have the result type?
Yeah.
Let's see.
The result of the monad, result, option, if you don't mind. I think that also is more interesting because they try also to the async approach. Since async is also a monad within a wait, it's interesting really for the promise tends to be have the same properties as the monad.
Yeah, so because promises can be resolved or rejected.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say it's not helping that it's hard to navigate their website. I'm trying to find just like a nice succinct example. I think in their introduction, like if you were writing it without effect, this is like the similar example we saw earlier. You'd write your code like this. But once you start using effect, you start using fail and succeed. And I guess the idea here is, so this is basically the result type, like effect.effect. So if it's a success, it will be a number. If not, it will be an error. And then what's the third?
That's side effects. So anything that basically is coming out of that that's not really related to the direct computation.
I see. And so it says never because it will always return a number or return an error. Okay. Yeah. I think it's too much for a lot of devs. I think that's kind of what I mean. I'd love to hear from everyone else if this is your first time seeing effect or hearing or seeing code like this. What do you think? Like, have you written code like this? Would you?
Yeah, I am very surprised seeing this. I'm a newer JavaScript developer, and in a lot of the code I've written, I've started creating types and objects that are reused in lots of projects that are actually doing exactly this. I didn't know it was a thing, and I use it for less safe operations, usually communications between different systems, databases, APIs, that kind of thing. That's where I find them most useful. So I think it's neat myself that I sort of came across this organically in a way.
Yeah.
Realized the need for it. I like it a lot. On the other hand, I really love the fluidity, openness of JavaScript. So it's kind of neat that you can do both, depending on your needs, instead of being forced into never or always.
Yeah, and I think that's what you might see is like certain projects might adopt it, and maybe we would see more adoption. But to what you were talking about, I feel like I'd sometimes do a similar thing because if you're working with a lot of async code, sometimes the try-catch can get super nested, right? Like try this, then try this, then try this, and if this throws, then do this, and like there are ways to write it more flat. Like you could define your variables like outside of the try-catch and then try to do stuff in a single try-catch, but that gets messy quickly. So like what you were talking about, a lot of times you can basically wrap things in a function that either return a result or return an error, and then instead of having to wrap it in a try-catch, you just have an if statement afterwards. So like if it threw an error, do something, and that kind of prevents that like nested code. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah. Other thoughts? In general, what are your impressions of effect? Yay, nay, weird?
I love the concept, but I balk at the boilerplate and the,
Documentation is very important.
yeah.
One of the biggest problems with libraries is documentation.
It's like, like, I love a lot of structure in my code, so it warms my heart, but I also know that I would be so frustrated by it eventually.
Yeah. The other part of your question, though, also talked about, I guess, like type safety. Were you kind of like leading into like validation of types, or?
When you throw an error, it's not really type safe. I mean, it's not like basically you're like in .NET, basically every
Oh.
from exception.
Yeah.
But you get the error in TypeScript, it's much more vague. It's much closer to basically like any than a specific type. So.
Yes. So in C#, when you define a method, you can say that it throws. Is there anything from here? What would be the right thing to search for here? Because there's specific code, right?
Yeah, you put an attribute on it.
So just like you can define your return type, you can also say this function might throw this type of exception. You know what? Why don't we use AI? Ooh, yeah. Show me an
I'm
example.
trying to go.
First exception. Okay, so this is throwing exceptions. Show me an example of throws where we can say a method might throw a certain exception. Oh, it doesn't? Is that a Java
There's
thing?
no comments to do it. There's lots of code constraints. They're
Okay,
not really runtime safe.
I see. So yeah, this is doing. Is this how you would do it with attributes or annotations?
Yeah.
Because this is basically saying this method could throw these 3 different type of errors. And if you're writing code that calls this function, it has all of that type information. So if you put it in a try-catch, that exception type, the type flows through it. It's like, oh, it could be one of these exception types. In TypeScript, everything's an error, right? You have to, if you want it to figure out what type of error was thrown, you have to have a bunch of if statements. Like if error is instance of Zod error, or if error is instance of Axios error, you have to like write that code yourself. And there's no way to even ahead of time say that this function might throw that error. So that's what they're talking about. We don't have that. I feel like TypeScript could maybe add it later. It almost feels like something that could be added on, but yeah, I guess I don't know enough about how TypeScript's actually implemented, if there's any like edge cases where it wouldn't work, where you could say throws. Let's see a Java example, because I know it has a throws keyword. Yeah, so you define your method, and then you can say this method will throw file not found exception or IO exception. Those are 2 different type of exceptions that could be thrown. And so later on, when you're using it, you can catch those specific exception types. And this is a lot cleaner than a bunch of if statements. And you have the type safety because you know exactly the exceptions that can be thrown here, right? You could write TypeScript code that checks for 10 different types of errors, and TypeScript wouldn't yell at you because it's dynamic. It's possible that it was one of those other error types. Now, I think this is cool. I think this would make error handling in JavaScript a whole lot better. I don't know if there's any work being done on this.
Anyone know anything? Oh.
Yeah. Not keyboard, keyword.
I was gonna say, I thought the error is not actually an object.
Well, that's that might be the main issue, right? Because in JavaScript, you can throw anything. You don't have to throw an error object. You could throw a string or a number or undefined, which is why we have to have those guard clauses that say, okay, let's make sure that error is an instance of error. Yeah, but it almost feels like there could be some kind of static analysis by the TypeScript compiler. Like the TypeScript compiler could say, hey, and maybe it's like a mode you enable where it's like, hey, I know that read file can throw file not found or IO, and because of that, it will only ever be that and it can't be anything else. I don't know, that actually may be the issue.
Yeah.
I had a different topic.
Yeah, it's cool. Thank you for those topics. Those are fun to explore. Who learned something new? Yeah, heck yeah. All right, what do you got?
I'm wondering if any of you guys have worked with Bun or Deno. I feel like I've gone deep in the AI rabbit hole, and the other newish, I guess, big movement in JavaScript that I've seen are these alternative runtimes of just what's it like working in them? Why should I or should I not try them?
So first, we'll take a step back and talk about like what these are. So if you probably have heard of Node.js, this right now is the thing that has the most market share. Most people, if they're running JavaScript on it's a lot of people, not most people, because there's even more alternative runtimes. But if you're running JavaScript on a server, you're very likely using Node.js for that. Node.js even itself has a long history of forks and merges and people basically arguing about how it should work and how it shouldn't work. And that's kind of why we have other runtimes as well. So Bun is an alternative runtime. So it basically allows you to run JavaScript on the server, but instead of saying node file name, you say Bun file name. And they have all kinds of impressive stats. Like when Bun came out, they were all about, we're super fast. Like a Hello World Bun server can serve up to 60,000 requests per second. Whereas if you wrote the same server with Node, you'd only be getting 20,000 requests per second. So you could run the same code on both of these, and it's going to run faster inside of Bun. That's their whole thing. This is their website and their benchmark that they ran, because Deno actually is pretty fast. And I'm biased because I like Deno a lot more. But Deno is another alternative. I will say what's interesting about Deno is it's from the same creator of Node.js. So Ryan Dahl created Node.js, and then he worked on it for a while, but then eventually left and decided to do his own thing because he had a lot of qualms with how Node.js does stuff. Like the security model of Node.js, where when you run a Node program, it basically has access to your entire file system. He didn't like that. So in Deno, they have this idea of kind of like security first, where you have to opt in to say, oh, this program can read files, this program can write files, this program can access the network, or this program can read environment variables. Basically, all the things that your program might need to do when you're running it in Deno, you have to explicitly say, yes, it can do this. Whereas in Node and in Bun, it'll just run your code. But all of these are alternative runtimes. And so your question is, why and which have you used? Is that what you're asking? Or yeah. Personally, I like the fact that Deno came out with this whole like security by default thing. And the other thing to look out for in these alternative runtimes is how much plain old Node.js backwards compatibility do they have? Because for a long time, for both Deno and Bun, they didn't support all of the things that you could do in Node.js. So for a very long time, if you tried to run a Node program in Deno, it might not work because it might be like, oh, we don't have access to this Node.js thing. But Deno reached version, was it 2?
2.
Yeah, version 2 of Deno brought like 99%, 98% Node.js support. So when they released version 2, it was like, hey, you can take any Node.js program, including like Next.js, or like take any app you've written that you can run on Node, run it on Deno instead, and it's going to be a whole lot faster and potentially secure by default. That was their thing. Bun has always been about speed, and they've also introduced a bunch of like extra stuff. So they have a SQLite library built into Bun itself. Which some people might like because you don't need to install a package for that. Literally, you can spin up a Bun program and start talking to a SQLite database. the thing about Bun is it's called Bun because it's also a bun. It wants to be so many things. It wants to be a runtime and a bundler. So the idea with Bun is you could point it at like your React code base and it could actually build it and turn it into those built files like you would get through Webpack or Vite. Bun tries to do that as well. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna chime in because I played around with Bun some just on personal projects because I need excuses to code. And I have to agree, like, it's almost like it's trying to be too much.
Oh, here we go. This was the other thing. They have Amazon S3 storage just built in. You don't need an AWS library. You can just talk to Amazon S3. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I think it's trying to be a little too much, especially for my little personal project. Like, there might be reasons to use it at scale for the built-ins, but yeah, I found it a little bit like, oh my god, now what am I doing? Because like I found some part of this thing that I didn't need.
Yeah. And you could also take the perspective, well, you don't have to use the S3 piece. You don't have to use the SQLite piece. You could just write your code exactly like you do in Node, but run it in Bun instead. Sure, but this reminds me of the early days of browser wars, right? Where Internet Explorer would support one thing, but Mozilla Netscape wouldn't. Or Safari would support something, but these others wouldn't. And that's kind of what we're dealing with now because we have all these runtimes that have slightly varying support for all these different things. And if they don't stick to the spec, the ECMAScript spec, as they start to waver from it, now if I wrote my code to run inside of Bun and I'm using this S3 client, if I ever want to move to Node.js or move to Node, now I have to, or move to Deno, I've got to rewrite. I got to rewrite my code to now use an NPM package or something like that.
Yeah, I was like, I had another point. And yes, like, if I want to use SQLite or if I want to use a different database, like, it's so baked into my code, and I'm very into being as modular as possible for plug and play tooling.
Yeah. And this is one of the nice things about what Deno released in version 2.0, where you can import things and also import NPM modules, but they come with a prefix. So if you import an NPM module, it's npm : package name. If you import directly from Node, so some of the core libraries in Node are like HTTP, someone name a core library. FS, yeah, so for file system access, you can import from Node : FS. So that's one of the interesting things about Deno is it gives you that backwards compatibility. The other aspect of this is for doing native things like file access, it's different in each one. So we just mentioned the FS library. This is a core module built into Node.js that lets you do things on the file system. So you can read files, you can write files. It has a specific API. If you want to do those same things inside of Bun, they have a completely different API. If you look at file system FS, yeah, in this program they're importing from Node.fs, but they do have their own FS program before this, or library before that existed. Does anybody use Bun? Do you know what?
I use the Node file system.
Yeah, you use Node.fs, and that would make sense because that's like more backwards compatible. But at least I know Deno has Deno.writeFile, Deno.readFile, and it's completely separate. So if you wrote your program with like readFile or writefile, then it wouldn't be compatible with Node.js because yeah, if you ran this code in Deno, this would work, but if you tried to run this code in Node.js, it wouldn't work. So all that to say, they each do their own thing. I think at the end of the day, you want stuff to be backwards compatible. You want it to work in the future. And that's why a lot of people are just sticking with Node.js to begin with. Or moving to something like Deno that has that backwards compatibility. And I wanted to say something else, but I forgot. Any other thoughts on JavaScript runtimes?
A lot of packages are also, because their runtimes are so specific, aren't compatible. So if you basically download a third-party package and try to use it, it won't work. For example, there has to be a Bun-specific one, a Deno-specific one.
Yes.
And I
So
can finish it real quick for your third-party packages.
Yeah, the idea is there is like you can't just install something from npm because it might not work in Deno, it might not work in Bun. I will mention a fun project is called Unjs, and their whole idea is to try and also be like a standard library of like JavaScript runtimes. And so Unjs has an FS module. Don't they? I know they at least have an env package. Yeah, so like Unjs has a package called std-env. std stands for standard env. But the idea is you could install this package in Deno, in Node.js, or Bun, and access the environment variables in a common way. And they've written the code to work cross-platform like that. So this is one attempt to try and make packages more cross-platform. But like you mentioned, not everyone's trying to do that. And so you'll come across packages that aren't compatible.
It feels a little like polyfilling in the browser.
Yeah. And yeah, basically the implementers here had to do that. Like so if it's an if statement. If I'm running in Node.js, do process.env. If I'm running in Deno, do Deno.env. If I'm running in Bun, do Bun.env. So yeah.
Thought I saw another hand. Anyone else want thoughts on runtimes? All right, new topic time, anyone?
Anything.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm like philosophically aligned with a lot of the stuff that's in Deno. I was kind of very much into it and excited about it. But yeah, like with production grade software, like it's like a drop-in replacement for a lot of what Node can do, but it's like 98%. And with a large enough code base or a weird enough use case, you're going to fall into that 2%, and you don't really want to get into that situation where it's very difficult to fix or unfixable, or no one else is having that problem. So I've been pleasantly surprised at the amount of activity that the Node team has been doing over the last couple of years. And I might be hallucinating this. I think there's a native SQLite module in Node now.
I think there is. But you bring up a great point, which is I think a great segue, is the fact that Bun and Deno exist has made Node.js innovate. So Node.js recently released a built-in test runner, because this is another thing that both Bun and Deno have. Like in the world of JavaScript, typically you'd install Jest, and now you'd install VTest. But if you're using Node.js, they have a built-in test runner. And then I do think, it might not be stable yet, but I do think you're right. I think they could release like a core SQLite module as well.
There's also a native way to do terminal colors buried in the utils module.
So it's in active development. So you technically can use it if you're at least Node version 22, but you will get a warning that says, hey, this is experimental. And then do you know what it's called?
It's in utils, and I forgot what the actual name was, but it should be in there. It's like style colors, style something.
Style text.
Yeah.
And why this is relevant is because if people just use this, then they wouldn't have been vulnerable from that npm package, Chalk, right? Because Chalk basically does this, and so anytime somebody wanted to have colors in their terminal, they would install Chalk. But if you're using the latest version of Node.js, you could just use this instead and not be vulnerable to a supply chain attack. So yeah, it's a great point to bring up. It's like basically those other runtimes existing make it so that the Node.js team starts to innovate and is introducing some things like this. I'd be curious if their SQLite API was exactly the same as Bun's, or if maybe they could align at some point, because otherwise now it's basically just like two different SQLite libraries. But it is cool that you can talk directly to a SQLite database without installing anything. Nice. Other thoughts or? Yeah.
I just want to go back to my, oh man, now I've stumped myself, and it was my own talk. Carcinization talk about the front end, which is how a bunch of things all evolve to be crabs eventually, or crab-like. And we have a little short lightning talk about the front end doing that, because React will, steal an idea from Vue, will steal an idea from Angular, will steal an idea from Svelte, and they're becoming more similar. I think these are going to go the same way, which is fine, as long as they steal the best ideas.
Definitely.
What else? Yeah?
Oh, this is kind of a different topic,
Yeah, it's fine.
but every 6 months to a year or so, I check in on this. There's a proposal for adding a pipe operator to JavaScript, which has been floating around since 2018. So if you look in there and you look at some of the discussions, people have been arguing about the format of the operator and like for 5 or 6 years, just continuous. They'll like come to some sort of conclusion and then they'll present it to the committee and the committee will shut it down. And yeah, it's interesting reading because I think it would be cool to have that, but it seems like it will probably never happen.
I don't want it to happen. I do not like the pipeline operator, and mainly so. This is it. This is the pipeline operator. I want to find like a good example. Yeah. So basically, if you were to write this code today, it's like nested function calls. So we're doing a console.log. We're using Chalk, and then we're calling its function called dim, and we're passing in. Is it 3 arguments? What am I looking at here? So, yeah, 1 argument here, another argument, another argument. So 3 arguments get passed in. The first argument is a string that has all of our environment variables concatenated inside of it. Second argument is node. Third argument is, where does args come from? Must have been an external variable getting all joined together. So the idea being you're calling a function, passing several things into it, and then passing that into another function. With pipes, it basically is like inverted. So you first grab all of these environment variables, you then pipe that into a string, you then pipe that string into chalk.dim here, and then you pipe the result of that into console.log. So this is a very functional way of doing things. Instead of having these nested calls, you invert the problem and it's much more flat. Personally, I don't like it because it brings back memories of Haskell, which is the worst time I've ever had trying to learn a programming language. But that's my problem. I'm sure I could get used to it. Because Haskell is a functional programming language and these pipes are everywhere. If we take a look at it. Let's go back to Claude. Show me an example of pipes in Haskell. So yeah, but you do like it. What do you like about it? Get the mic.
I don't know. I sometimes I find myself just I am leaning more towards like a functional-ish style of writing code, and if I'm like calling a bunch of functions on top of each other, it would be kind of nice to just layer that nicely in a pipe type of format. But yeah, I don't have any experience with it in another language, so I don't know what I'm doing myself to.
Yeah, I think that's it's like this example, simple enough, but you can get crazy with it. I will say that it definitely, if you have like deeply nested calls, it's gonna make it flatter, but it kind of inverts how you have to think about it. And so I guess for me, I think about like the cognitive load, and it really just comes down to familiarity, right? I think if I used it enough, I probably would be familiar with it, but right now, every time I look at it, I have to basically recreate this in my head by looking at this. So I don't know. But in general, we got down this path talking about it, but if you're not familiar, there is this committee called TC39, and they basically come together to say what new features should be in the JavaScript language. And currently, the pipeline operator is a stage 2 proposal. So what they were mentioning at the beginning there is like it's been in stage 2 for a very long time because they can't agree on what it should do or how it should work. But eventually, if they do agree, then it might actually make it to stage 3. In stage 3, you will see certain JavaScript runtimes and engines actually implement it. So you might actually be able to use this in Chrome one day, or in Deno, or in Node, before it's actually officially in the spec. And then if several people implement it or introduce it and they've gotten enough feedback, then it might actually make it to stage 4, which means it makes it into the spec, which means once it's in the spec, every implementer of the JavaScript language will eventually support this. But right now, we're still at stage 2. Let's see that Haskell example. Is that what it looks like? Okay, for some reason I was remembering. I guess, is that a custom Unicode character?
It looks very vaguely valid.
Okay, but I just remember actually seeing the pipe greater than, not this, but yeah, this is Haskell. Cool. Other thoughts on pipeline? Other thoughts on anything else?
All right, you can vibe out.
Just vibe out.
Let the AI discussion resume.
Yeah. I'm just gonna rant, and then if anybody wants to chime in, they can. Okay, so I showed earlier that we cloned the npm landing page with Lovable, but what I want to rant about is all of these vibe coding tools are they're all doing the same thing, right? So okay, lovable.dev, create apps. Like you literally plug in a prompt, and then it's gonna spit out an app for you. Has anyone here used V0? So this is an offering from Vercel. Same thing. Plug in a prompt, it's going to spit out an app. Has anyone used bolt.new? No? Similar, you plug in a prompt, it's going to spit out an app. Chef is they've been around a little bit, but they actually open sourced their tool. But same thing. You give it a prompt, and it spits out an app. I don't think we're the target audience for these tools because we are a bit lower level, right? We're actually like in the code base. We want to see the code, we want to edit it. But the target audience for these tools are like more non-technical people because the promise is you can just write with natural language and then it just generates an app for you and you don't need to hire a developer anymore. But I don't know. I just think it's very silly that the interface for all of these is exactly the same, right? It's just a text box. Tell me what you want to build, and it like generates the thing. And each of these tools might be innovating slightly because behind the scenes their prompts might be slightly different. But at the same time, each of these tools is very likely all talking to the same OpenAI endpoint. They're all talking to GPT-5 or Cursor, their Claude Sonnet. So they're really just like wrappers around these AI tools. Yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say. All I'm saying is like what does the world come to, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And an interesting note, though, is Cloudflare actually released an open source Vibe SDK. The idea being that you could create your own hosted version of one of these vibe coding tools. And in a way, by releasing this, they've almost like skunked a bunch of startups that were all trying to do this. Because if you look at it, so you can go here. This is the demo. Yeah, let's create a to-do list app. Well, you have to be logged in. Let me log in. But all of the code for it is completely open source. So you can go to this repo. You can see how they did it. of course, because it's from Cloudflare, it's hosted on Cloudflare, but Cloudflare has all the infrastructure for this because Cloudflare has the ability to run code in a sandbox, so like it doesn't leak out or it can't like potentially like hack the rest of the codes out there. They have an SDK for like talking to AI. So this example basically like plugs all these Cloudflare services together to give you a vibe coding platform. So here we go, create a to-do list app. And it's gonna go off and it's gonna start building me an app. Look at that, it's using...
There's a lot of
well, so this is the other funny thing about these vibe coding tools is they use shadcn and Tailwind by default, like because AI was trained at a time when that was like a lot of the apps out there. So first thing it did is like, oh yeah, I need a components file, I need a Tailwind file, and then I need all those dependencies which shadcn is dependent on for Radix UI. Yeah, it's okay. And then I think this is like the status of like what it's working on. So yeah, it's telling me what it's going to do. The thing is, at this point, it's kind of overthinking it. I told it to build a to-do app, you know? And now it's like, oh, I need to think about user flows and data flows. And in the initial phase, I'm going to work on, they're going to have a store. Oh, they're using Zustand with React to store my to-dos. I don't know. But the interesting thing about this is you could host this on your own Cloudflare infrastructure and then basically give Lovable and V0 a run for their money because you have a slightly tweaked prompt that maybe like generates better apps or something. I don't know. Yeah.
I was going to say I've used Lovable a couple of times, and the thing I found it most useful for as a developer is like when you need some sort of utility site and you don't want to build it and you don't want to log in and you don't want to Google and open 5 tabs and figure out which one works. Like I needed to make one that showed text color to background accessibility for brand colors for a client. And I tried Googling it and none of them were like what I needed or, hey, you can test this with 2 things. And so I just put it into Lovable and built this little utility. I also think some of this, both with chat and these builders, is just level of AI literacy. Like I think a lot of us understand more of what's going on under the hood, whereas, like you said, like the non-developers are like, I just made an app. It's like, well, it's going to have a massive data leak that's going to dox millions of people. You still need a developer. But I think as developers, knowing how it works, figuring out what it's good at, and these little, I guess, utility things where it's like, hey, I need this for this specific thing, and I don't want to go Google this.
I will say, like, I have used V0 for the purposes of like, I want to build this app, but I actually don't care about the code. It's like a one-off tool. I don't think I'm going to expand on it in the future. I just want this app to exist. I just vibed my way to it with V0. I can show you. It's in my other profile, though.
Oh, there's not a hand. Yeah.
But before you do that, I will show you. We got a to-do app. So this is what our we're not hosting it, we're using the demo version, but our self-hosted vibe coding tool. Learn vibe coding. It failed. It didn't add the to-do. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, does anyone know of any success stories from a person that vibe coded an application that's monetized and working well?
I don't, and I would love to hear it because I'm on Twitter probably too much these days, and there are so many people that are like, "Oh, I'm vibing this whole thing." Like, my thought is the only people that actually are successful had to hire somebody technical, right, to get all the secure pieces right.
On spaghetti this week.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, if you vibe your way to a tool and then expect that, I can just go hire a developer to make it better later, it's probably going to be really hard for them. They're going to charge you more because it's going to be spaghetti. But I vibed the app that he just mentioned. So I said, give me a tool that allows me to show the accessibility of background and foreground colors. Tell me why this is bad, Marlena.
Okay. The fade on the
Yeah, you can't see it.
the green and white. Oh, it's so inaccessible.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to tell it.
Those
It's like,
check
hey.
marks are really
This site.
It just
Oh,
feels-
okay. But here's another interesting piece. When you use these vibe coding tools, it really loves the color purple. This is like if you go to a landing page and you see the color purple, it is very likely that they used AI to generate that app.
Honestly impressed it found WCAG AA and AAA. We don't know what version of WCAG, but can you check if that's an H1 at the top of the page?
I just told it, hey, the site itself does not have accessible colors. Do better. It's an H3. H3. Also, use semantic and accessible tags like H1. Great.
Sorry, I'm totally interrupted you, but I am big into accessibility, and that just hurt me.
Yeah, I just had one more question with AI stuff. So an issue I've run into is that one, it makes the complexity of the code it produces just overly complex. And then two, I work a lot with Angular, and it seems like all the AIs just do not have the updated template language. It uses star in GF or star in G4. And
Yeah.
I'm like, does anyone have any tricks to consistently get it to use the latest template language instead of using old practices for whatever library?
I do, and I'd love to talk about it. Who here uses Context 7? One hand, you're all gonna go home and use this. Okay, so they have indexed almost every single bit of documentation out there and put it into plain text consumable format. So for instance, what version of Angular are you looking for?
Like 20.
Yeah.
So if we just search for Angular, you can see it has version 14, version 17, but version 20 of the docs is available right here. And if we go to the page, this is basically just a markdown version of the docs. And you can request a certain number of tokens. So wait, why is, this isn't enough? There's only 1,100 tokens for the,
That would be amazing.
this is just for the CLI. That needs to be fixed. Okay, it might not work for Angular.
TJ, on that page, there's a search box for like what specific tools you want. If you go back to the Angular 20,
Let's see, this one?
show docs for, you would like put in the subcategories like routing or whatever, and then it would return that section.
Okay, but my thought was this is the total number of tokens. Usually the total here you want to see as like 100,000. Like that's the total number, and then, but yeah, so I just searched for NG4 and it came back with,
Change it on the tokens.
but that's what I'm saying is like, yeah, that's the total. You might have to play around with it. Because like, for instance, if we look at Svelte, look at the latest version of Svelte, it's 90,000 tokens. So this is like all of the Svelte documentation. And you don't have to use this tool. I'm going to show you in a second how it will work. But behind the scenes, this is what it would be doing. But yeah, I could grab all 90,000 tokens. And now in a single bit of text, I have all of the Svelte documentation. But the nice thing is there's an MCP server. So you set up this MCP server and you let Cursor or whatever tool you're using know about it. And you say, after your prompt, just say use context 7. It will go out, it'll find the library, it'll pull the specific section of the docs for what you're working on. So instead of pulling all 90,000 tokens, we could say, hey, I'm trying to do data loaders for Svelte. And this pulled back just the part of the docs that had anything to do with data loaders. It then includes that piece of the docs in the context, and then it's less likely to like hallucinate.
Okay.
So you can set it up with like a local MCP server. Who here does not know what an MCP server is? It's okay. Let me show you. So inside of Cursor, if you do open MCP settings, you can see all of the MCP servers that you have enabled. Right now I have 3 different ones. There's this one called sequential thinking, where every now and then if I say think hard or try harder, it will actually call this tool and do the same kind of thought process that you see like ChatGPT does, but it'll do it within the cursor window. So sometimes if I'm on like a really hard bug, it'll start doing the sequential thinking where it's like, okay, I'm gonna think over the process of 4 steps. My first thought is that I need to do this, this, and this. My second thought, so like it makes it think harder, I guess, when it's trying to solve problems. I don't know. I can't come up with the words. But context 7 is the one that can reach out and find the docs. So yeah, actually, yeah, let me generate like just an app and we can see the context 7 server in action. But the idea with these MCP servers is they're basically just tools that Cursor can call out to if it thinks it needs to do that. So in the case of context 7, if it gets down a path and it's like, oh, I need documentation, because I have this tool installed, it knows that it has it available. So it'll be like, oh, I'm just gonna go ask for the docs from context 7. The other tool I have is called is Playwright. And so when it's working on an app, it can literally open up a browser to the website, click on things, see the output in the console, and debug from there. So I'm going to generate a React app and show you those MCP servers in action if anybody wants to.
I'm just gonna mention it's 10 till 8.
Yes, this is the last thing that we will do.
Okay.
Can you put that bullet section 7?
Context 7, yeah.
Context 7, can you please put that in there?
Yeah, I'll show you. I'll put it in. I'll put the link in. Okay, so so we got a React app. We're going to use TypeScript, npm. Let's go.
While that's going, I just came across MCP servers for the first time today. If anyone's ever heard of Krazam, they make like meme content.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah. Yes.
M in MCP is model, so they did America's Next Top Model Content.
Context protocol. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of America's Next Top Model.
I saw it in passing on my Twitter feed.
I watched it today, and because I didn't know what MCP servers were.
Yeah, here it is. America's Next Top Model Context Protocol Server.
It was pretty good.
And if you haven't seen the Krazam YouTube channel, it's just like tech comedy. They make fun of so much stuff. There's a really classic one about like microservices. Yeah.
But it's not that.
You can't hear it, but they're like talking about the user microservice and like it's just making fun of tech stuff. But yeah, Krazam, check out Krazam. I'll link it in the in the notes.
It's okay, like sometimes it forgets like the track. You know, yeah.
Or you never use the signals.
Oh yeah, no, they'll figure out signals. Very next week.
Okay, so I generated this React app. I'm going to open up Cursor in that folder. And I guess just as an example, let's ask it to add some kind of Vite plugin. What's an example? Anybody install a Vite plugin recently that does something interesting, like SVG loading or font loading or
GSAP.
GSAP?
I don't know if that's a plugin.
Is it a plugin for Vite? Okay. I'll just ask it to add a font loading plugin or something like that. But first of all, in my MCP settings, I just have context 7 globally available. So any project I'm in, I always have context 7. So here I'm just going to say, let's add a Vite plugin for font loading. Use context 7. So first, it needs to resolve the library ID. So that's to figure out, okay, what library are they talking about here? And so that was a tool call to say, let's find a library for Vite font loading. Okay, and then after it found the name, this is a tool called Get Library Docs. So it specifically is getting the library documentation. I think I asked it for something too hard because it literally is just talking to the Vite docs now. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna go read the Vite docs to see how do we do font loading. So these are calls out to the Context 7 server that are pulling in that documentation. And let's see if it can do it. It's gonna write it from scratch. Gosh darn it. This is why, I don't know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And this is our future, non-deterministic. Yeah. Yay. But in certain examples, especially like if it's something that you're working on, like Svelte or React or whatever else, it'll get those specific docs. I would say try this. You might have to find specifically which Angular. Maybe we just go straight to the Angular docs. This one has 43,000 tokens, and I'm guessing it's the latest. So if you're using the latest version of Angular, it would have the examples that you're looking for. So you could tell it, use Context 7 for Angular, and it would be able to pull in those docs. One last thing I'll show you is the Playwright MCP. So I'll just say, start the app and open it with Playwright MCP. So because I installed the Playwright MCP, having trouble connecting to the model provider.
Until the V.
There we go. So it literally launched the page, and now I could tell it to do things. Well, like if this were like a fully working app, you could say like, okay, test the login functionality. Here I'm just going to say, let's click the count button 10 times. And so it's literally, it clicked it once. I think it did too many calls. Yeah, so it clicked it again. You can see the count going up there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Efficiency.
Yeah, so, but it can do things like it can go to pages, it can fill in forms. So this is a way to get it like very, very autonomous in terms of like give it a task and it'll like test it in Playwright as it goes. Okay, I've got all the links here. Thank you everyone for all your insights and questions. This was awesome. We got to talk about a lot of stuff. Yeah. You can clap, that's fine.
There's a few slices of cheese, one slice of supreme, gluten-free, and the vegan. Take pizza if you want pizza, please.
Yes, please take the pizza. I will say there is a React meetup in town that you might not know about, but they're meeting on October 7th. They're a small group, so I want to let you all know about them because they could use more people. But on October 7th, they're talking about fixing broken technical hiring with real code-based challenges in this exact spot. So on October 7th, come back, you'll learn about React. And then our meetup is happening again on October 28th. So I won't be here, but the other organizers will be, and hopefully we'll see you again. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Get home safe.